I made my top 100 favorite secular bands list a few days ago and got to thinking about you guys. You're actually number 4 on my list, but the top 10 are probably interchangeable. I first heard your album, Cruise Your Illusion, online someplace and ordered the CD probably around 2016. It was winter, and I live in Minnesota, so your songs were the soundtrack to my tundra commute. At first, I loved the opening track and a couple others. I didn't think too much of it, but for some reason I didn't switch the CD out. I just kept listening through it, and especially my favorite tracks, Know Nothing, My Shelter, and Cruisin' with God. I don't think it always makes sense to try and explain why we latch on to certain music or what characteristics are so interesting or significant to us as fans or critics, but I will say a little bit about what I really think. This album perfectly captures what I've been calling youth freedom. There is a distinct and utter rejection of perfectionism on the record. This annihilates any hints of pretension that I could have sworn I was hearing early on. But the album had nothing to prove to me. I started thinking of it as record store core, but that also seemed unfitting. It was the epitome of something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The album gradually became one of my all-time favorites, and was actually inexhaustible for me. The way so many albums grew old and faded, yours did not. Despite the strong initial memory of hearing the record, I don't associate Cruise Your Illusion with any particular season or memory as I do with most others, because by now I've listened to it year-round for almost a decade. I'm often weirdly seasonal about my music listening. The instrumentation is raw and ultimately refreshing. The mixing and production are an enigma I won't get into, and the vocals sound as though they were recorded in the last moments of a man's life. A man who has surpassed all fear and regret. It is genuinely liberating. The album sounds to me like a kind of surrender, and I wanted to elaborate on that. I haven't made a video about an album I love in years, you guys, but this here is what I really wanted to talk about. I'll go on record again proclaiming the necessity and or usefulness of spiritual surrender, because if our lives aren't unmanageable, they will be one day. I spent a lot of time toiling in my bad habits, and toiling in indulgences of all kinds. Music is probably no exception. I spent a lot of time thinking about its effect on people, why we grow tired of it, and why we don't, for example. There are very few albums I've heard as many times as Cruise Your Illusion. Pixies' Bossa Nova is probably neck and neck for most plays, but I'm getting off topic. My point is that the emotion conveyed in music is vast, and unknowable by any one person in any one lifetime. I think music indicates a spiritual reality, and music itself is a kind of spiritual solution. It's strange to me that your songs provoke such feelings of peace, surrender, and acceptance for me. It's not something I commonly experience with music, and nobody else does it quite like you do. That oftentimes when they're able to come close, the production's all polished, and it sounds like they're trying too hard. So I did some addiction recovery stuff, and long story short, had an immense conversion with the desire to follow and explore the legitimacy and magnitude of Jesus. I wouldn't have just done that for fun. It's actually been quite challenging to reconcile my vast taste in music with faith, and seeking to know God. At one point I lost fondness for several genres, and I've left behind a lot. But 2 years into faith, I still get the desire to listen to your band almost every day lately. It's amazing the things we leave behind and the things we don't. I've really grown to see the value of context, however. It's context that I believe we use to build our understanding of reality itself. So I truly hope that you receive this testimony of what your band has meant to me and what has happened in my life. It's a lot of long stories, I'm afraid. Thanks for hearing me out. Feel free to email me here if you'd like to talk about any of this. I appreciate you guys. I think the solutions we find, choose, and develop are somehow even bigger than the music. I never would have thought that was possible before, but here we are.